Howdy and welcome to the Strange West Podcast. This is your host and word hustler extraordinaire, Trent Tano. Bringing us in as always with their rendition of Eno Mariconis for a few dollars more is the mighty Mitch Polzak and the Royal Deuces. If you like your gunslingers like you like your guitar slingers, then head on over to MitchPolzak.com. That's Mitch, Polzak.com. In tonight's podcast, the Cowboys vs Nazi action continues in Chapter 21 of Paris High Noon by yours truly, Trent Tano. Go get your Cowboy vs Nazi on and head on over to ParisHighNoon.com. Both paperback and ebook are available at ParisHighNoon.com. Paris High Noon t-shirts, sweatshirts, and other swag are available at Society6.com/Trentano. Both Paris High Noon and the Mustache t-shirts are available at Society6.com/Trentano. And as always, a big thank you to James K. Doyle for lending us his tiniest talented podcast. He really does bring Paris High Noon alive. So without further ado, here's Chapter 21 of Paris High Noon.
Chapter 21, Paying the Debt. Inspector Martin stood at the most rigid position of attention his spine could hold. Moneybags and Boxy sat in front of Black Bart, who sat behind an oak desk. For the two gangsters, it was the usual routine, selling out their fellow outlaws to whoever wore a badge. In this case, it was the silver death heads who would hand them their bounty, a fact that made them nervous. 2 weeks ago, word spread around the underground that there's a new skull-badge sheriff was in town. Black Bart wanted information on the old cowboy and his gang, La Bande Sauvage, and he didn't mind breaking some necks to make his point. When one boss, Jumbo, refused to cooperate, Black Bart dropped the hammer on him. Lieutenant Hoff led his posse of SS gunfighters to the old Busted Wheel Cafe where Jumbo held court in the 13th arrondissement. The Parisian gangsters put up one hell of a fight, killing 3 of the SS posse, but the law in black had more and bigger guns. Hoff killed all but 2 of Jumbo's men, who were brought out bleeding and alive. Black Bart dragged Jumbo out by the legs onto the street. The boss had taken a burst of submachine gun fire to the chest and made a sucking sound every time he breathed. Black Bart took out his pistol and pointed it straight at the 2 survivors. One pissed himself, the other puked. "I want you 2 shits to witness this," Black Bart said. He pointed his Luger at Jumbo's knees and shot one and then the other. Jumbo writhed in pain, screaming so much that his sucking chest wound sounded like a cow trying to get out of a bog. Black Bart pointed the smoking barrel at the henchmen and told them to spread the word that this was what happened to those who refused to cooperate. So when Boxy told Moneybags that it was St. Jude who started the Donnybrook at the Body Maid, the boss took him down to Black Bart. The trip didn't help Boxy's disposition or the pain in his nuts. He sat with his legs spread while Black Bart asked the questions. Black Bart leaned forward. The chair creaked. "Are you sure it was St. Jude?" Boxy cleared his throat. "Yeah." Moneybags interrupted. "It was St. Jude, Mr. Sir." He was the boss and felt it his privilege to speak for his man. Black Bart turned to Moneybags. "I wasn't talking to you." Moneybags fidgeted with his tie. Yes, Mr. Sir. I apologize." Black Bart went back to Boxy. "How do you know him?" Boxy tried to close his legs. Black Bart's stare made the throb in his groin worse. "I knew St. Jude back in my Apache days. He was a worthless fuck back then, and he's a worthless fuck now. I'll never forget that shit-eating grin of his, like he was the goddamn king of France." Boxy's muscles tightened up. The 2 bruisers eyed each other. "I'm not in love with the prick, if that's what you're asking." Black Bart leaned back, making the chair squeak again. A few Reichsmarks bills were the same as the ones stolen from Argenton, but Black Bart needed confirmation that it was St. Jude before he hit the trail. "Thank you for the information. If it proves out, then you'll be rewarded." Moneybags gave a cough. "I'm sure you'll catch the old cowboy and his curs, monsieur. just as I'm sure Hitler will know no defeat on the battlefield. And I know this goes without saying, but if anything else comes up, I will deliver it to you personally as a token of respect to you." Black Bart stood up. He nodded to Inspector Martin, and the Frenchman opened the door. Moneybags got up and stuck out his hand to Black Bart. "I was hoping, monsieur, if perhaps as a token of thanks, that I might be able to secure a small advance on the reward for the old cowboy." Black Bart put his big hand on Moneybags' shoulder and squeezed. "You walking out of here with all your blood is all the gratitude you're going to get from me until I have that old cowboy." Moneybags almost stumbled when Black Bart let go of his shoulder. "Yes, of course, monsieur. Please forgive my eagerness to help you. Shouldn't put the cart before the horse." He gave a weak chuckle and scrambled out the door with Boxy right behind him. With the gangsters gone, Black Bart turned his attention to Inspector Martin. "What do you have to add?" It was Inspector Martin's turn to saddle the bull. "Sir, I'm going over the murder of a whore at a brothel off of the Latin Quarter. When questioning the madame, she mentioned that the John was bragging about La Bonne Sauvage. Was it St. Jude?" "I don't think it was, sir. Whoever cut the whore was smaller, with a shoestring mustache. Besides, it happened the same night as the fight at the Body Maid." Black Bart rubbed his chin. "Go through St. Jude's and every Le Bon Sauvage file. Match any known associate who was also convicted of rape and murder." Inspector Martin gulped. "That might take some time, sir." Black Bart turned his head to Martin. "Fuck you and your time. I've given you enough time that if you were digging a hole, you'd be halfway to China by now." Martin stiffened his back and stuck out his chest so quickly the motion of his large gut moving forward made him wobble like a duck. "Yes, sir. I'll get right on it." He gave a quick sloppy salute and went for the door. Black Bart let his heavy fist fall on the desk. He felt like he was running around in circles while the clocks on Himmler's wall ticked off the minutes and wound down the hours. Time. It was one of the many things Black Bart had going against him. He was surrounded by fools and besieged by wolves. On the thought of wolves and fools, Hoff came into the office. "Sir?" Black Bart straightened up. The two gunfighters locked eyes. "Report." Hoff pointed to the map where the large sections of Paris were circled in red. "Reports are coming in from the patrols down in the catacombs. Other than Jews and rats, we haven't found anything. No sign of the old cowboy or his gang." Black Bart nodded. The Paris underground had just as many places to hide as the outlaw trail. What troubled Black Bart was the question of what brought Catfish back to Paris. It didn't make much sense for a wanted man to return where the gallows were being set up. But to brazenly sit in a bar full of Nazis was an act beyond insanity. "Sir," Hoff said, "I suggest we take some of the men patrolling the catacombs and put them topside. Even if the old cowboy is dumb enough to show his face once, I doubt he would be that stupid twice," Black Bart said. He had to assume that Catfish knew St. Jude had been fingered, and therefore went to ground. The old cowboy wasn't in the habit of making mistakes, but if he put on the pressure, maybe Catfish would tip his hand. Black Bart asked, "What about the girl?" "She's with Richard Rouge." "Then bring in that red son of a bitch," Black Bart said. "Or should I do it?" Hoff saluted. "He's as good as standing in front of you." Then he marched out the door at an urgent pace. Black Bart looked at the old wanted poster of Catfish which hung on his wall. He wondered if he was up to the challenge. Back in the Wild West, scores of lawmen tried their best to catch the outlaw, and only a few succeeded. He was determined to be the last man to bring the old cowboy in. Once he killed Catfish, his debt from the deal he made with Goering had to be paid up. Before the night of the Long Knives, Goering approached Black Bart with a choice: betray the SA or die with them. Black Bart knew he was on top of Himmler's liquidation list, but Goering said he could help. "Put on the black shirt," Goering said. "We can use a man with your unique talents." Black Bart always wondered if this was Goering's way of settling his debt to the man who saved his life during the beer hall putsch. Either way, it wasn't a free pass. In order for the SS operation to be successful, the SA armory near Bad Wiese had to be neutralized. In charge of this fortress was Harl Henrik, Black Bart's best friend and fighting part on the streets of Nuremberg. They fought and drank together through thick and thin, and Black Bart had to kill him. Black Bart took a bottle of schnapps from his drawer and poured. It pained him to remember that night, how the guards on duty saluted him with stiff arms and drunken Heil Hitlers. They were young brawlers, the kind that swelled the ranks of the brown shirts. The sergeants and officers were upstairs, sucking each other's peckers and tickling each other's assholes. Hitler had to make excuses for Rome and the other high officers of the SA for their man-love trysts. But the army and the church would not have such men being part of the new Reich. Hitler needed those institutions more than he needed the SA. Black Bart told himself he wasn't sorry for what was about to happen. He was a survivor, and surviving meant sacrifice. He asked one of the officers where Harl was. The man, his shirt off and pride growing in his pants, answered that he was downstairs in the arms cage. He asked if Bartholomew would like to go upstairs for a stein. Most of the SA knew that Black Bart didn't swing that way, but a few knew that at times he did. In the early violent days, it seemed that they lived for the moment and therefore loved it as well. Down in the weapons cage, Harl sat by the duty desk reading a Nazi party magazine. Gun oil and metal mingled with the mustiness of the basement. The two men had not seen each other for some time. "Mein friend," Harl said, getting up and thrusting out his hand. Black Bart took it and gave him a firm, friendly shake. "It's been a while, Harl." Harl pulled Black Bart's arm into him so they were chest to chest. Harl looked up at Black Bart and asked, "Where have they been keeping you?" "I've been going between Munich and Berlin," Black Bart continued the embrace. "Much is going on now that Hitler has the chancellery. I always knew they would promote you to the inner circle. I'm surprised you haven't gone over to the SS." Black Bart winced. Harl noticed and let go his embrace. He motioned for his friend to take a seat. Black Bart sat down, took off his cap, and let out a breath. Harl opened a top drawer of the desk and laid out a bottle of schnapps and 2 glasses. "You seem upset about something." Black Bart forced a smile. "It's nothing." Harl poured 2 shots, sliding a glass across the table. Black Bart grabbed his glass. "Lots of young ones up there," Black Bart said. "Have you been recruiting at the reform schools?" Harl laughed. "They come to us. They got nothing better to do. There are no jobs, and the girls go for the communists, or worse yet, the Jews. But that's going to change very soon." Harl raised his shot of schnapps. "They're good fighters and can hold their own against any Red or Jew outfit on the street. Of course, we cleaned most of that scum a long time ago." The 2 friends raised their glasses and downed the booze. Black Bart let out a breath. "One more, mein friend." Harl smiled and poured. "Remember that time back in the summer of 29? It seemed so long ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. What was the name of that trade union we fought?" "The Scarlet Volks," Black Bart said. "Ah, those goddamn Reds. They put up a good fight. We might have lost that one if it wasn't for you." "Always take the high ground," Black Bart said, and emptied his glass. The schnapps was helping him forget that he had to kill his friend. He motioned with his cup for another. Harl smiled and drowned his shot. "Is that something you learned while being a cowboy?" Learned that during the war, and with that Black Bart's face couldn't hold back his sorrow. Harl got up from his chair and walked behind Black Bart's back. He placed his hands on his shoulders and began to rub them. We learned a lot in the war, how to fight, how to kill. But we also learned how to love each other in that hell of fire and madness. I loved my comrades. So many died that I wished I'd died. How can you go on after losing so many friends? Then I found Rome and the SA, fighting in the streets. I learned to love again. Harl leaned over and put his hand around Black Bart's chest. He kissed around his neck and ear. Black Bart stood up and faced Harl. His friend had that same look in his eyes after that fight in Nuremberg, lying in bed. Harl confessed his love. Only it didn't feel right to Black Bart. He loved Harl more than any of his wartime comrades. Yet once their flesh mingled, a feeling of confusion and revulsion settled in. I know I cannot love you the way you want to be loved, Harl said. But I know you do not hate me for how I feel. I want you to know you are the only man who I have ever loved, who I let inside me and touch me. I want you to know how special you are to me. Black Bart leaned down and kissed Harl and wrapped his arms around him. He released his kiss and put his big hands around Harl's shoulders, caressing the soft tissue of his throat. Forgive me. There is nothing to forgive. Black Bart slapped his hands together like one would slap a fly. Harl's windpipe was crushed instantly. He grasped Harl's lower jaw with one hand and the back of his head with the other and jerked. Harl fell to the floor, kicked his leg 3 times, and then lay still. The beer hall merriment continued noisily above. Black Bart took the keys to the gun cage from the desk and the pistol belt from Harl's dead body. Black Bart strapped on the second belt over the first, slipped on a black leather trench coat, and walked up the stairs. Upstairs, there was still enough sober SA men to be dangerous. The SS wanted him to go out the back door and take care of the guards, but it wasn't going to happen that way. A brown shirt noticed Black Bart coming up from the basement and called out, "Hey, Bartholomew, done already?" The laughter was cut short. Black Bart pulled leather on both Lugers and started to fire. 4 brown shirts fell before the rest of the barracks realized what was going on. Men poured down the stairs, shirtless, with one hand on their pistols and the other holding up their pants. Black Bart fired, reloaded, and fired until he reached the back door. Finally realizing his betrayal, the SA fired on Black Bart. Wooden glass splintered around him. Orders were shouted over the gunfire to get to the gun cage. Then the SS knocked down the front door and started to fire on the SA. Caught between the brown shirt Judas and the black shirt gunfighters, Rom's stormtroopers fell in heaps. "Drop your weapons," an SS captain yelled out. "You are all under arrest by order of the Fuhrer." The surviving SA threw up their hands and were marched into the foggy night, most never to be seen again. Black Bart took another shot of schnapps and got up to examine the likeness of Catfish on the wall. So familiar from when he was a boy. Many had died at Black Bart's hand in the night of the long knives, and many more since. But after Harl, nothing ever bothered him the same way. Since that night, he half hoped the other man would be quicker on the draw. But no one ever seemed to be. When the time came, he wanted a cowboy's death, same as he aimed to give Catfish. The way Black Bart saw it, betraying Rome's SA and killing his best friend was just a down payment on his soul. Killing his hero would be the final fee.
And welcome back to the Strange West podcast. Once again, this is your host and word hustler extraordinaire, Trentano. Well, that about does it for tonight's Cowboys vs. Nazi action in Chapter 21 of Paris High Noon by yours truly, Trentano. Go on and get your Cowboy Vs Nazi on at ParisHighNoon.com. Both paperback and ebook are available at ParisHighNoon.com. Paris High Noon t-shirts, sweatshirts, and other swag are available at Society6.com/Trentano. Paris High Noon and the Mustache t-shirts are available at Society6.com/Trentano. And as always, a big thanks to James K. Doyle for lending us his time and his talent to the podcast. He really does bring the voice of Paris High Noon to life. And setting us out, as always, with their rendition of Eno Morricone's For a Few Dollars More is the Mighty Mitch Polzak and the Royal Deuces. If you like your guitar slingers like you like your gunslingers, then head on over to MitchPolzak.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Until then, happy trails.